Hi everyone. So today I'm going to do a recap of how to do a origami folded paper sphere using just two pieces of paper and a little bit of glue. So not true classical origami, probably more Kirigami, but you get this lovely sphere. This one hasn't been completely glued together, so when you leave it, it pops open and you've got the top and the bottom of it. But I quite like it in this form because you can use it for other purposes around the house. So if you have a small little cactus on a windowsill that's got a lovely small little pot that will sneak in there, you can decorate it like that on the outside, or any ornaments or things that you just like to jazz up, you can slip this over and it looks really nice just on its own, resting like that. Or alternatively, you glue those pieces together at the top like I did when I first started, and then it is a complete sphere, which you can hang from strings, which also looks really lovely over Christmas time. To get started, you need a ruler, scissors, and a pen, pencil, or marker, and two pieces of card. An A4 sheet should be enough if you only have one piece. And you need to use really light cards. It's fairly bendy, but it's got some stiffness to it. This will work with paper, but it works much better with card, and it would be very tricky if you had a very rigid card. So a light, soft card is the best kind of paper to use. To get started, you need to cut your piece of card. If you're using two different colors, one out of each size, you need to cut a 20 centimeter by 10 centimeter rectangle. And do your measurements really carefully, because getting those perfect rectangles is really quite important. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. So once you've got your two rectangles cut, those dimensions again are 10 centimeters across and 20 centimeters lengthwise. So two of those, and we just fold both of them in the exact same way. So I'm going to go ahead and start folding on the blue one. Right, the first fold we do is in half. And there is a way you could do this where you just measure out these lines and draw them by hand, but I find it works really nicely to just do the folding straight off the cuff using this method. So let's go ahead. So fold in half, open it up, and then you're going to fold into that fold in the center, and be very careful to get as tightly into it as you can. And we're going to do that a number of times till we have this piece split into 8 sections. So when I fold it in half the first time, I have 2. The second folds I do these ones, which I'm completing now. I then have 4 segments, and I now need 8, so I'm going to fold those in half using those central lines again. So, and I've got one more fold to do, this bottom one. So I've now folded it. The page has got a bit of a bend to it, which is fine. Happy with that, and I've got it folded into 8 strips. Next thing I need to do is I'm going to measure the central point on both sides and just make a small marking there. So it was 10 centimeters across, so I'm looking for 5 centimeters. I'm just going to lightly mark that off on each end. Something I should have told you is to actually turn it around at this stage. So I'm just going to move those markings onto the other side, because this curve is folding in nicely towards me from those 8 strips that I've done. And I wanted to do that because it just helps with the folding as I go along. So before I go and do those marks, I've put the midway point on the right and on the left here. I'm just going to go over those folds one last time, and I want them to all fold in the same direction, so the page almost curves on itself. So I'm just going to do one more round of reinforcements. Right, so it is all curly, which is good. I want it to all be curly like that. But I'm now going to turn it the other way around, and I've got my 2 central points on the right and on the left, and I'm now going to draw a number of lines which are going to do my folds on the other way. So these are diagonal lines we're doing now. So from the central point going down to the first opposite corner of that first strip, measure it as carefully as you can. If you don't want pen marks to show, which you probably don't, do it very lightly. I'm going to do it quite a lot darker so that you can see what I'm doing. Then go from the top corner diagonally across to the next one. So you're going to have a series of parallel strips going following this first angle, which I did here. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw all of those. So I've drawn all of my diagonals in one direction. I'm now going to go and draw diagonals in the opposite way. So I'm just going to do the reverse of what they did. Keep the page in the same direction that you were working on it. I'm now going to do the lines in the opposite diagonal. So I've now got my diagonal pattern drawn in, and I need to go ahead and do the folding. So my folds still naturally curve towards me. I want that to face the table. And I'm now going to do my curves in a similar fashion on top of each other, coming from this side and then from that side as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that folding. Something which is very handy, which I should have told you before, is when you are drawing in your lines to actually press really quite hard. It helps with those folds. I haven't done that, so I'm going to take a ruler to just help me get a nice straight fold. Even though I've drawn that line, it just helps me find where I want that fold to be. And I'll go ahead and reinforce these with my fingernail. But yeah, definitely do this for your second one. I should have mentioned that at first. And that would be every time you're drawing your lines to actually push in really quite hard with your pen or your pencil. If you have a pen that is run out of ink, that even works even better, because it just leaves a nice indentation without the ink, and it makes your folding a lot easier. If you're using the ruler, just make sure that it is folding. You need to pull it about 1 millimeter away from the line so that it's folding very nicely for this stage. Right, so I've done that just to get me started, and I'm just going to reinforce them with my fingernail, which I will speed this up for. Right, so my page is now going to be curling in that fashion, and that's what I wanted to do. I'm going to keep it on the way where I had the lines drawn up, because I'm going to continue folding the opposite diagonals that way too. So I'm now going to go ahead and do the others, but because I didn't do it the first time, I'm going to quickly do it now. I'm going to go over those lines that I'm about to fold, and just using the tip of the pen, pushing really hard, because it makes an indentation, and it means that when I fold, my fold is going to be perfectly along that line. So you can see it's going a lot darker because I'm pushing into the paper, making a proper little crease or little valley in the surface there to help with my folding. Now, because I've redone those lines, the folding should come a lot easier, because my paper will naturally find that bend where I pressed really hard with a pencil. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to do this sort of barrel folding or sequence of folding to get those other diagonals folded in. And again, reinforce with your fingernails. If you don't have fingernails, you can use a ruler to do that part. So I've got my fold. If I flip it over, you'll see that it's starting to form a nice pattern. Now, as you'll see, we've got diamond shapes all over the place. All the diamonds here at the top have a vertical line going through them, the same with the ones at the bottom, but the ones in the center don't have. So the last step is to add vertical folds in those gaps in between. So we were folding in, at first we folded the 8 segments in that direction. We flipped the page over, then we drew the lines, we did the diagonals, so the diagonals were folded in that fashion and in that fashion, like that. So to do the in-between lines, I'm going to flip it over one more time. I know it seems a bit confusing, but it really helps with when it starts to fold into place to have the folds in the right direction. So I'm going to go ahead and add those intermediary folds. And again, I'm going to use the creases that have been set up to do that. So I'm going to fold, starting with this bottom one, fold it in half to get to that first crease. And I'll speed this up so we can get over with that bit quite quickly. So I've now completed my folding. All my vertical folds were done in the same direction, so they're all facing upwards, and then all of my diagonal folds were done in the same direction. So I'm just going to go and reinforce that one more time, just make sure everything's folding in the same direction. So I'm going every single one that goes across the width of it, just making sure that it's bending in this forward motion. So I'm doing that one last time. You probably, if you've done it right and you're confident you've done it right, you don't have to do it again. But I'm doing it one last time. I want them to be curled like that. I'm then going to flip it over and I'm going to redo every diagonal going in on itself. They should still be in that fashion. Just quickly get them all right. And then switch to the other diagonal. It takes a few seconds, but it really does help with the formation. So the diagonal lines which I drew on this upward facing piece are going to be in the inside, and it's the piece on the outside that's going to be the outside of my sphere. So I'm not going to have any of those markings. The piece I'm going to attach it to, I actually did the other way around so that you can see those markings. But as you can see, where the shadows are falling, it's already starting to hold its form very nicely. Right, so the next stage is how we start to push it together. So I need to warn you that this bit is a bit frustrating because the paper is flat and it's going to resist you. It wants to stay flat, and we're actually making it push against itself. So it will resist this a bit. So you've got the piece facing forward with your diagonals pointing upwards and your verticals pointing downwards. And I want you to turn it towards yourself so that you've got one end facing you. There are two ways of doing this. I'm going to show you the first one. If we don't succeed with that, we'll turn it around and try the other one. So if you look at how this is completed, that's what it will become like. So we want all the central diamonds to fold in on themselves. They'll all become gaps, including the triangles on the outside. So I'm going to start with that diamond in the center, and I'm going to fold it on top of itself. But I'm going to be sure to let these bits move in on themselves on the outside. So what I'm trying to do, and it doesn't want to do it at first, this first step is probably the hardest bit, but I want to come up and get a C shape. So once I've folded this all together, I've got one here already done, you want it to form a C shape. So if I just compress this one, which I'm going to attach to it, it will look like that when we're folding it, and then when we release it, it pops into the shape which becomes the sphere. So I've got the piece facing me, and I've collapsed the central diamond, and then I've collapsed the triangle on the side and the triangle on the other side. And what I do with that is once I've pinched that and I can see that I've got that C shape forming, so you can see it there under my fingers, then I know that you're on the right track. If it's not forming that C shape, you've got to persevere. So I'm going to undo it and I'm going to start again. So hold it up towards yourself. Sorry, I've got the annoying bit at the background which I'm trying not to use to distract you. So you've got these first two triangles, let them face you, these long triangles. Then you want to push your thumb into the small triangle on the side and pinch it closed. Pinch it closed. This is the other method I'm showing you. And once you've done that, because of how we did the folding prep of the paper, this diamond in the top should start to cave in on itself. If it's pushing upwards, that's incorrect. It should be pushing down. If you can reverse it, push it down. And then I know I've got the C shape coming in, and I can carry on layer by layer. So I've got that done. I then pinch the two together, and I move on to the next triangle. Compress that in, push the diamond. Go to the next one, push that in, pinch it together, fold in that diamond on the side, push in that triangle on the side. Let me go and see what's going on the right hand side. Push the small triangle into the side. Go up, the central diagonal is folding in, fold that diamond down, move right to the left. So I keep folding it all in. It won't want to do it, it will try and go somewhere else, but with the preparatory folds we did, it should start to fall into place, and you will see that it's starting to take form. It may not be perfect, like mine is a little bit higgledy-piggledy, the actual sort of concertinaed piece, but using my middle fingers behind as well, I'm able to just push it all down, and I've almost got it all gathered up. push that last triangle in. So you're doing it row by row. You can't do it any other way. If you are struggling and you cannot get to do that, what I would say is don't handle that front piece too much. The more you handle it, the more paper becomes compromised and the bends go in the wrong direction. But this is what we're aiming for. So if you get stuck, give up on that side, turn around and start on the other side and try again. Try different things that might work for you. Just always know that you want all of the shapes to be concave, to be sunken. So you want the triangle to bend inwards, you want the diagonal to, so you can put your finger into every piece on the top. It's all caving in on itself. It's caving in this way to create that lovely C shape, which is what you want. Right, so that is how you do it. I'll give you one more recap on that. I'm going to pull this one open. So you've got it facing you. The folds should look quite what they should form. Like if you've got shadows forming like this, it means it's been folded really well. Hold it up to yourself. Get those two triangles to face you first. They're good. Pull them down, bend them towards yourself, and then see if you can, with your finger going behind, pinch that apex of the diamond up on top of it. Pinch it together on the side and you'll see that this starts to cave in, this next little triangle. So I want that to go in. Have a look on the other side. It's also caved. Then I'm going to move over to the next triangle, or close the diamond, close the other diamond shape, flanking it, and then close the triangles on the side. So it doesn't work in perfect order. So you sort of, the diamonds are bigger shapes and they have more pull. So let them collapse in first and then take in those little diamonds if you're struggling with it. And sometimes you might have a diamond that is going the wrong way around, but it's easy to correct. So again, I can see that this cardboard's bending a little bit in the wrong direction. I want the diamond to cave in. Triangle, cave in. Triangle, fold in on itself. Then the next diamond comes nicely on its own, and the middle one sometimes. And you will find, at first, you'll be like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. I'm never going to do this. And it is frustrating, and the paper is going to give you a bit of a headache. But once you've done it, and you start to do 2 or 3 rows of them, all of a sudden it starts to fall into place. A little bit fiddly, a little bit achy on the hands, but it does work. And before you know it, you will have completed the full C shape. Mine's a little bit skewed, but that's not a problem. It's just the folding, and when I leave it, set it down, it is a lovely 3-dimensional shape. And if I bend it on itself, there I have my sphere, well, the beginning half of it, because we do the other half with the other color. So I've now got my 2 halves, they're completed. This one's got the guide marks are actually the lines I drew in. I wanted them to look on the outside. I think it adds a lovely geometric pattern, so that's why this one looks a bit different. It also might look a little bit wider, but that's just because it's opening up a bit. So they are the same dimensions, and now what I've got to do is connect the 2 of them. So I start on one end with both of them meeting, and with the end of both of those semicircles you've got these sort of wide angle triangles, and what I need to do is I'm going to cut out one of them on one of the sides, not the other side. So I'm going to cut it out of the orange one. So taking my scissors, if you've got it's a bit tricky sometimes if you don't have very sharp scissors, you might need to unfold it a little bit, but just cut as neatly as you can along those folds just to remove these 2 little triangles. And then the one next to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the other one, the blue one. So I've positioned my 2 folded half moon semicircle strips facing each other. The side that I cut the triangles out of is this side and that side. So the cutout faces the non-cutout, and the cutout will be swung around and face the other non-cutout. So I'm just going to take the one with the cutout and I'm going to push it over the top so the top diamond sits on that diamond. I'm going to apply the glue and glue that together. So I need to go in and I'm going to add a whole lot of glue onto all those surfaces that it's going to touch. If you are using, I'm using craft glue. if you are using PVA or craft glue, you might want to let it dry for a bit. You don't want it to squelch out and make your object seal shut. And if you're using paper glue, you want to make sure you get into all it, like a stick of glue, you need to make sure you get into all those little corners. So I've applied glue onto the triangle, the diamond, the small triangles on the side. Oh, I skipped this one out. And then the other triangle on the other side. So I've got glue all over there. I might actually use this little leftover triangle to just help me spread it out. So if you've got a lot of sort of runny glue that's going to be slippery when you attach it, you might want to let it just dry for a little bit, leave it for 10 minutes, it becomes a bit more tacky so it holds a bit better. Right, but I'm happy with that. So for demonstration sakes, I am going to pop this on top of that. So I need to push down the center, push down the diamond. I'm going to rotate it, see what's going on in the back, and use, if you've got fingernails or sharp-edged something, to just help you get it all in as tightly as possible. You can even flatten it a bit, but you don't want to have struggle folding it again. So I'm going to close the concertina back on itself, and I want it to just make sure that it's completely glued in and fitting in like a foot in a sock would. So it's looking good. I've got a little bit of glue that's squelched out there, so I'm just going to correct that, and anything that looks wrong I'm just quickly pushing in. And the best thing to do is to leave this to dry. If you've used PVA, it'll take about 12 hours to dry. If you've used paper glue, just a few hours should be good enough. But just keep checking that it looks really perfect, those connections. You don't want any glue coming out anywhere. You want to make sure that it's sitting flush and that all those edges are sealed up. So I'm going to fiddle with this one a little bit more. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to leave it. So I'm just going to leave it to dry like that for however long is needed. And then I'm going to go and do the same. I'm going to fold it back on itself. And the bit that's had the cutout, so the left on this side missing those little triangles, is going to go on top and sit on top of that diamond. So I'll apply glue there, 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 the small triangles, and fold it in on itself. So I will just do that, and then I will show you the finished product. My sphere is now dry and complete. It won't stand up too well unless it's sort of been opened up, but it's all done, all folded, all glued. If I wanted to hang on some string, I can push those central pieces together, and I can insert glue when I do that into each of those little mini triangles there, because they collapse in themselves. So every second inner triangle, not the diamond. I can glue those together on both ends, and then if I insert so they'll be glued. If I insert a piece of string before I do the last one, make sure it's thoroughly dry, then that makes a lovely, really beautiful hanging ornament. And you may have noticed that a lot of light lampshades that you get in IKEA or Next over here in the UK, they use these similar folding principles to make those lights. So if you were to cut out the bottom piece here, you would have a very open half sphere, and people would obviously hang that from the pendulum light with the light on the inside. I'm not suggesting you do that, because you need to make sure you have got fire retardant paper to do that, but it just helps you think of other ideas. So you may want one that is a bit open, so you may want to put it around a small little open dish that you might keep jewelry in or something, and you can actually cut out the top layer, and you've got more of a floral open basket shape, which is also really pretty. So that is our completed Kirigami cardboard folded sphere.